Okay, it's top of the hour. Let's give people another minute or so to get here, and then we can start. Okay, we can get going. So this is the interim for CBOR. Today is January 21st, 2026. Um, I did not post an agenda. The one agenda item is Lawrence still trying to get more consensus on parts of CBOR serialization. Just a couple of notes. One is Karsten had commented yesterday I'm sorry, Lawrence had put a bunch of text, proposed text in the GitHub repo and created a pull request, which is fine. Karsten made comments in it, and I said, please don't make comments in the pull request itself because there's plenty of people on the mailing list who aren't following. I got some pushback afterwards from a couple of people saying, oh, the GitHub repo is fine. I'm going to reemphasize my pushback. For example, Karsten's comments would have been easily translated into the mailing list because they were often comments on a line or two. And so he could have copied the line or two into the mailing list so people could see what he was commenting on. And I'm not holding this against Karsten per se. Lots of people might have started it this way. But we're having a problem on the mailing list finding consensus and having some consensus being done off list, I think is going to actually harm us when we get to working group last call on this document. So please try to do everything on the list so people can see what you're doing. Even if it's a little bit more difficult, like, oh, I have to copy a couple of lines from what Lawrence put in, that still is worthwhile doing on the mailing list. Our job here is not to create a document. Our job here is to create a document for which there is working group consensus and for which we believe there will be IETF consensus when it goes out to IETF last call. In my mind, the best way to do that is to have all discussions on the mailing list so that people who might not be GitHub enabled or whatever are part of the consensus process as we are going. And as I said earlier, we've got just one thing on the agenda today, which is Lawrence's presentation, where he's going to be asking a bunch of questions and trying to move forwards. So I'm just going to hand it over to him. Please take it away.
Thank you, Paul. Just on the GitHub, for me, things like typos and grammar, those are fine to handle in GitHub. But anything that requires mailing list consensus or working group consensus, I've been pushing that back out to the mailing list. So I think that aligns with what Paul just said, and I think Paul's points are great. So. Okay, so first I've got a status update on the draft, and then moving on to the PR that makes recommendations for should, must, or nothing on ordinary serialization. So no PRs merged since the last meeting. Just there was work, but nothing to be merged. So still 16 open issues, same ones. There's a couple of them that now have PRs for them that they didn't have before. mostly related to tag 2 and 3. I won't go over them here because that's not really the topic for today. Yeah, so these are the two new PRs in green. Yeah, I won't go over them today. So I don't want to fall into a discussion of back to big numbers. Although I do think we have a consensus in the working group on what to do with the big number equivalence, which is that the big number equivalence with integers stands, but we're not going to do that anymore for any other tags. So that was I'm happy for that bit of consensus, and I mean, my read is that that was an accomplishment that we got a lot of people on board, and we found the sort of the balance there. So okay. Before I go on, just any comments on the open PRs and issues? Brief comments. Yeah, Karsten.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. I just wanted to point out that a document with 16 open PRs is a little bit difficult to handle. I mean, if these are PRs about typos or mistakes in some CDDL or something like that, that's not a problem. But right now, this document is pretty hard to grasp for me. So this slide says, will publish draft or two when more PRs are merged. Yes, please. And I would be happy if we could get a new draft that goes more into the direction that you want the document to go. I don't think we can have both discuss everything on the mailing list policy and a policy that we leave potential changes out there in pull requests. So at some point, we just need to have a draft, even if that hasn't perfect consensus yet. So Rohan mentions there are only 5 PRs. I'm sorry, that's great information. But please, let's have a new
So I mean, I've been kind of holding back on publishing until I think we're close to consensus. The message I'm getting is publish even if we don't have consensus. Is that right?
So I will jump in my chair with my chair hat on. It is fine to publish where if one or two places don't have consensus and mark that in the document as we do not have consensus here. I think that's actually fairly common. So since you have some PRs, especially the big numbers, and how we're going to deal with tags in the future, for which you do believe you don't have to mark it. But yes, I believe more drafts more often that are well marked is just fine.
Because other working groups have handled this very differently.
Yep,
I
absolutely.
mean, I've had working
Yeah.
groups where I couldn't merge a PR until I made a presentation at an interim.
Right, absolutely, and this is not that. This is a group
Okay.
where we often get rat-holed on the mailing list, about text that we're not seeing immediately, and I would
Okay.
rather that we had, current text. And again, I believe that if you, as the document author, believe that there is not consensus on some text that you're putting in the draft, just mark it that way. We will,
Okay.
a later version will take out that note, possibly changing it or not. This is all
Okay.
pre-working group last call. So I believe we can be more rough and ready with pushing out drafts as long as we don't have any reversions. So
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So this is there's the PR for a new section that makes recommendations. I called it the recommendations section, and I think it's section 2, so it's early on in the document. The point is to say what particular participant in the CBOR ecosystem should do, or may do, or must do, or just not say anything. I've divided this into 3, addressing 3 different participants. So one is CBOR libraries. So these are things like Ciborium, Tiny CBOR. There's lots of them. The current proposal says they should support ordinary serialization and they may support deterministic. There are protocol designers. I said future protocol designs because there's a lot of protocol designs out there already. We're not going to go back and change them. I mean, the existing protocol designs are, things like CWT and COSE and CenML and such. But EAR is a new attestation draft. Merkle tree proofs is something that Ori was working on that's CBOR based. The proposal here is that they should have some text in there that says ordinary serialization should be used. I know double should, but it makes sense. And then there are protocol implementations or deployments. So this would be like a fully deployed CWT or CenML or EAT or something like that. So it's not the CWT document or the EAT document. It's something that somebody's actually deployed. And again, these should implement ordinary serialization. Oops. So, I mean, I have a few pros and cons from my thinking that I'll present here to kind of base the discussion on. So I believe preferred serialization has been relatively successful. It's commonly implemented, and we don't have people showing up here in the working group saying, CBOR has an interoperability problem. I mean, we don't really hear those complaints, and seems to be deployment is doing okay. The problems with preferred serialization were a lack of clarity for definite lengths, NAND payloads, and big numbers, and there still is some confusion among protocol designers, but still not a bad track record. The point of saying should support ordinary is to remove a lot of the confusion and provide a clear direction. As opposed to saying nothing, there's nothing said about preferred serialization. We don't say you should do it, although there's some implication in the name. So the idea is to say we should support ordinary serialization to remove much of the confusion and provide a clear direction. Note that it is almost trivial and a sensible transition from preferred to ordinary because the differences are so small, and especially in terms of practical things. I mean, this is by design. We could say must support ordinary. I think that provides great clarity for the ecosystem, but it would mandate unnecessary work for some use cases. Like if you had a use case where you only used indefinite lengths for arrays, it would force you to support definite lengths for arrays. And if we say nothing, I think we just define ordinary serialization. I think we actually end up with a little bit of increased confusion because of because ordinary and preferred people will say, what's the difference? And like, should I do ordinary or preferred? And they have to think about it a little bit harder. And I think if we say nothing, it's also a missed opportunity for clarity. So that's, I think there's some interesting discussion around interoperability here. And I think I'd like to, that's one of the things I'd like to talk about. Paul?
Thank you. Can you go back a slide, which is sort of the
Yeah,
main text
we can
here? One of the things, and I'm not stating a preference here, but one of the things on the list where I believe we do not have consensus is the first bullet, because libraries do a couple of things, and I think it would be good for us to say which parts we care about. A library can emit CBOR, a library can receive CBOR, and a library can validate CBOR. So it receives it and says, ugh, okay, but it might have a validation step or whatever. There might be more slicing and dicing to do, but those are the three obvious cases. And I would like to see the text here actually speak to each text. I believe that the second two major bullets, the future protocol designs and implementations, are just fine as they are. Others might disagree, and that's fine. But where I've seen problems so far on the list is the question of what is a library. So, for example, a protocol implementation may not use a library. It might just hard code itself. Does it need to follow the library recommendations? And I think a sentence or two saying, yeah, if you're not using a library, you are actually using a library. You've got some code, call it a library.
Yeah, Paul, I think one of the things that before jumping off into the discussion is one of the things I really wanted to ask here is to get a lot of participation from a lot of people here, because there's a lot of people don't comment on the mailing list, and I find in this discussion that there are people here that do not say anything on the mailing list. And actually, if you're here, no matter what you think, please make some comments, and so we have some more broad-based discussion, and we can feel like we get consensus rather than just being like a debate between two or three of us. So I'd actually really like to hear from a lot of people on this one, because that's where we get the consensus. Thank you. Okay, Karsten.
Yeah, thank you. One problem that I have tried to bring up regularly, and I even have some slides that Paul is trying to ignore. The question is, what do these terms support and use actually mean? And maybe Paul was trying to say the same thing, but I want to make it even more clear. We need to take this apart. And supporting something might be the encoder can generate instances. Yeah. So we have a little problem here. So here are my slides. Libraries might have encoders that have configuration options to stay within certain serialization constraints. So that's one definition of support. Or another definition of support, or maybe use, might be that a library has a decoder configuration to reject anything that is not within the serialization constraint. And we know that we want this for deterministic encodings. But I think we have a bit of a problem approaching the other cases. and in particular approaching the case where a slightly misguided implementer might be putting in a check in a decoder because they think they need to support this, but that's a very, very different thing because it really damages interoperability. So I think we need to be very clear which parts of the meaning of these words we actually mean. And then there is another thing I would like to point out. You have nicely separated this into libraries, protocol designs, and protocol implementations. The problem really is that we have a lot of protocols out there that have none of this. So saying a library that implements CBOR should support ordinary serialization, yeah, is that true for a library that is being used to implement, let's say, CWTs? I think we need to be clear about what we actually can say in a normative way. And Nikolai had a comment in the chat about that. So again, we have to be careful what kind of interoperability problems we want to cause. And for me, it's way more important to control the outcome than making the wording in the draft sound good. So we should really think about what does it mean if the draft says something, and are we going to have any adverse outcomes from that?
So, Rowan, just a quick one before you jump in. Karsten used slightly different, or definitely different language than I did, and I'm totally happy with it. But we should agree. I had said emitting, receiving, and validating as the three categories. Karsten used encoding, decoding, and validating. I'm sort of more used to like on the wire types of protocols. Karsten is very familiar with, this is all in memory right now. So however we do it, we should come up with consistent wording. And if we need additional categories, that's fine. Carson, if you want to get back in line, I only heard you talking about those three categories, but if there are others that should be here, I think that that's useful as well. So sorry, Rowan.
No worries. Yeah, so I'm thinking about this from the like know your audience perspective, and when we say you should support this, I think what we're saying is that please go do this so that applications can rely on it being implemented, unless you have a good reason not to do it. In which case, for example, maybe you implemented CDE, or you have and originally before we had should used to mean do this unless you have a good reason not to, and we have a convention that when you put a should, you should motivate the should and explain in what cases you wouldn't want to do that. And I think that that's reasonably well motivated in the text that Lawrence provided. But again, putting the power back in, giving power back to the applications, that's what I would really like to see, is that we say, that if we're saying we're making recommendations to people who are making libraries, and we're making recommendations to future protocol designers, hey, this has a track record of working well and is basically already implemented by most libraries anyway. You should be able to rely on this, and it doesn't have any excessive cost penalties associated with it. I think those are all excellent reasons why we can say the things that Lawrence has said in the document.
I will make one comment here, is that protocol libraries are often incomplete. It's very common. So mean, nobody implements all of Concise, for example. Just the algorithms, but even like, you know, Mac and stuff like that. Okay, Karsten, and then I want to hear from somebody else.
Yeah, I think we need to take a good reading of RFC 2119, which is often not exactly used in the way it originally was intended. The idea was that those keywords, those uppercase things, are there to remind the reader that certain things need to be done to actually get interoperability. And I think we should use a different word for recommendations that are more in the sense, hey, if you do that, you will benefit from it. But unrelated to interop. Yes, security is a form of interoperability. If you the protocol can be used to do something that is not secure, it hasn't interoperated. Paul is completely right. A lot of RFCs are abusing 2119. A lot of people out there also think that anything that hasn't been written up with 2119 keywords actually is not normative. So we have those deviations, but I think we should make sure that we have a consistent way to use these words, maybe even announce in the introduction or the definitions how we are going to use these words, and clearly distinguish between this is good for you from this is good for interoperability. Okay.
All right. Anybody else? Joe, do you have a comment? Ira? Vadim?
Sorry, I was looking for the right tab. I'm trying to stay out of this as much as I can. So I do think the one thing I disagree with Karsten on that I heard was I do think it's valuable to give advice to libraries that they should have a mode where things get checked on decode. And that's selectable by the person using the library if they want to be generally useful, because there are going to be some protocols that mandate it and some implementations that want it.
Okay, I don't know. Thomas, Martine, do you have any comments on this? So just on how we handle interoperability in the CBOR ecosystem? Okay. So Nikolai made a comment here, and I think that goes to something I actually would like to speak to. Like I said, protocol libraries are often incomplete, and serialization aside, we clearly, like, not all libraries support all CBOR tags, and some don't support float, and all sorts of, so there's already, libraries, CBOR libraries are incomplete, and you do not guarantee interoperability by, forcing libraries to be complete. So that's definitely a thing. Yeah, what we say about libraries is, this is good for you as a library implementer. So I think that's right. The other thing that's interesting here is that what we've done in the CBOR world is most of the protocols like CWT and COSE seem to me more like toolboxes than protocols. I mean, they're if you implement parts of CWT, you may or may not interoperate with somebody else, right? Because somebody might be doing some claims that you're not doing for a different purpose. Same with COSE. COSE is a very large standard, very difficult to implement at all. So different things don't necessarily interoperate. And in terms of serialization, we allow flexibility of serialization in CBOR, and we like some of the flexibility that protocols like CWT and COSE give us, because it allows them to be adaptable to different environments. So I think the real place is for interoperability is where the rubber meets the road, which is the protocol implementations. And as far as I can tell, we leave that up to the implementer deployer, and they got to work it out here. Ira. Not hearing you, Ira.
Ira, we're not hearing you, but it doesn't indicate that you're on mute.
Okay, Ira, let's maybe we just pop in when you get your mic working. Okay. Marco, have you got any comments? I haven't bugged you.
Okay, we're at the pulling teeth part of the meeting, which I'm as wearing my chair hat, I'm unhappy about. We are going, as Lawrence has been presenting things on the mailing list, there has been a small amount of discussion about what does that mean? I like that, I don't like that. There's been a lot of divergent discussion about other topics which are unrelated, or I wish we had done things differently, or you're all idiots, this is how I'm doing it. We need to come to consensus on this document before working group last call, or at least enough consensus for us to enter working group last call. And if we don't have it, the document dies and probably the working group dies. And I'm not saying that as a threat from me. I am passing that on from our area director. So it behooves everybody to participate on the mailing list, even if it's I don't care, saying that so that we know, and some people might ask, well, why don't you care? But we really are at the point where if we don't have more activity on the mailing list, I mean, by the way, Lawrence, we still do want a new draft out. And you can mark this as, take whatever's been said today, certainly in the comments, and do what you will with it, and then mark that section as, still needing, or still obviously needing more consensus. But if we don't get more activity on the list of people saying, this is interesting and it's fine, this is interesting and it's totally wrong in this way, or I wish that we had this kind of wording, we will get shut down. and I don't mean just for this document, I mean the working group will have proven that it can't even have a productive discussion on a topic that is reasonably important to us. So, I'm happy if somebody else wants to speak today on Lawrence's presentation, but if not, this is not like a, "Oh, okay, it's not important." Then this is a call for, especially the people who couldn't get me to co-working, sorry about that, to talk on the mailing list directly saying, "I want this, I don't want this is fine, this is not fine," or "I don't care about this for this and this reason." With that, hopefully one or two other people might be able to speak, although I totally get that, this is not the only way we can do things. Lawrence, is there anything else you need from this meeting other than teeth pulling?
Let me try one more tooth.
Sure.
Um, uh, uh, so I wanted, future protocol designs. My proposal here is that they should say that ordinary serialization should be used. That future protocol designs for things like CWT and COSE and EAR and Merkle tree proofs, that we want them to be mostly neutral, or maybe with some favoring towards ordinary serialization, so that they remain flexible and deployable in constrained environments. If a protocol, like CWT mandates definite lengths and stuff like that, it limits its deployability in constrained environments. I'd like to get comments about that, whether we think it's good for protocol designs to just be not say anything at all about serialization, or should they make recommendations, or should they say must? And this is an interoperability thing. This is not a good for you thing. Okay.
So, yeah, I think new protocols that are being shipped after this document should say something about serialization. If only so that they have a hope of constrained devices being able to elide part of the implementation if they possibly can.
So they should say something like a should, but not a must, because you don't want
No, it
to.
only works. I think I agree with Karsten. It only works if those protocols say must. So, or must not, or something along those lines, right? So, for example, if you wanted to have a protocol that was DLO, you would say must not use indefinite links, or must use DLO if that's defined adequately in this spec with a reference to the spec that's normative.
Okay. So Karsten, you say protocols should, it only works with must, but CWT and COSE don't say must in lots of places.
Yeah, but they don't have to, because they are working in the framework of CBOR. So you don't invent new serializations, you only constrain serializations. So they don't have to say anything, because CBOR is the boundary within which they operate.
But my point is that there's many other things other than serialization that are that they don't say must about. For example, algorithms in COSE. There's just it's a
Yeah,
huge
because
open
COSI is
area.
toolbox. So somebody can go ahead and write a short government spec that says we're going to use COSI with these algorithms and those data structures, and that's fine. So that's what COSI gives you. It gives you labels, names for things that can be used in very short and
Okay.
very little risky specifications. And that's
Okay.
what we should try to support.
So I guess what you were saying is that most of the things that we define for CBOR are still in the toolbox category. SenML, CWT, COSE, those are all still toolboxes. So yeah, they don't guarantee interoperability. Joe?
Yeah, so a new protocol could say you can use any valid CBOR or any well-formed CBOR. It could say you must use any. You could use any valid CBOR. It could say, et cetera. And I would say that if there are existing documents that don't call one out, or if a new document doesn't call out any of these constraints, it's any well-formed CBOR.
Right.
Not any valid CBOR, any well-formed CBOR.
Correct.
And so that means that all receivers must implement all of CBOR without exception. If that protocol designer wants to be able to limit how much of a CBOR implementation is needed to receive, then it may choose one of these things. And we recommend that it should say something to make it clear to an implementer what they need to implement.
I like very much what Joe just said, in the sense that that is specific wording that would be added for the second bullet. So the second bullet can say, should say something, and it can say, should say that ordinary serialization must be used if you are should be used if you are specifying something. But that second bullet might actually be the most valuable thing here, where we're telling protocol designers, yeah, if you look at the old ones, they don't say anything about this. We're here to say you should say something about this. And if you don't, then your receivers have to implement everything.
And that's the carrot for saying something in your spec is if you don't say anything, then your receivers must implement everything.
So I'm beginning to think that there's a line between protocols that are intended as toolboxes and protocols that are really have to have end-to-end interoperability. So FIDO protocol seems to me something that absolutely requires end-to-end interoperability. And the way the FIDO Alliance operates and the way they define the protocol and all that, that is an end-to-end interoperable protocol. And they have a conformance program, a compliance program. But protocols like CWT and COSE are toolbox protocols, just like CBOR. So yeah, while it's sort of true that if they say nothing, then you have to implement everything, but like nobody implements everything in CWT or COSE, so I'm not sure I agree with that, just like nobody implements everything in CBOR. So there's this bright line between a toolbox kind of thing and a real end-to-end interoperable protocol.
I think good toolboxes will say something about this. They don't have to, but they should.
Yeah, good toolbox protocol designs. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so one example for not a toolbox design, but a tool design is the Concise resource identifier, the CRI document, which will be 9880 within a couple of weeks, where we actually say something about serialization. Yeah, that is very, very specific. And it also addresses the fact that this tool might be used standalone, in which case we can say something about serialization, or it might be part of a bigger protocol, and then the bigger protocol needs to say something.
Yeah.
Lawrence, is this enough for you to modify your current PR here to, and it sounds like they're mostly expansions. Do you feel like you've heard things that would be likely to move towards consensus here? And I'm not saying final consensus, but consensus enough for you to get a new draft out?
Yeah, I think so. This is definitely helpful.
Good. I'm glad this is helpful, by the way, so people not among the chairs and Lawrence know that I don't like these interims, not only because it's 7 o'clock in the morning for me, but I find I am one of these, everything should be done on the list. And it appears that I'm wrong here, that it is helpful for Lawrence, so we can continue to do these. But if this is helpful, Lawrence, I would ask you to, we're at a Wednesday. Can you pull together a new draft by Friday or Monday?
I maybe Monday, but certainly not Friday.
Well, some people don't work on the weekends, so for some people they are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you can do that soon, I believe then, I mean, certainly we can keep discussion on the list going, but if you feel like you have a bunch of new stuff for this, I'm feeling that people here are saying, I don't like this, I want it this way, and other people going, that's the same thing, and that there's some agreement happening. So I would love to keep that momentum going as soon as
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I need to think hard about what was said today. So that's
Okay.
that's the source of my hesitancy, and
Okay.
I want to make sure I think hard, but I'll try
And
pretty
feel
hard
free
to
to
get it.
think hard on the mailing list. That might be of use to you as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Are there more discussions? Ira, thank you for the no mic issue, but at least you are here in the chat. I will exhort folks to be active on the mailing list. Anything that was brought up today on specific wording, especially from this slide, feel free to say on the mailing list. Just because Lawrence is going to do a new draft doesn't mean we need to wait. There might even be a word or two here or there that comes to the mailing list. He goes like, oh yeah, perfect, and puts it in. Clearly, this will be discussion after he has a new draft and well before we go to working group last call, because this goes to the question many people have had: why are we doing this? Who's going to benefit from it? Or as Rowan said, like, what is somebody who's reading this out of context going to take away from it. So please keep the mailing list active. I would love it if the mailing list could focus on this and not on other topics for a while. However, it is the CBOR mailing list, and there are other topics to come up. But I would like more focus here if we can, so that we can show that we are able to come to consensus on important documents. Any last bits, Lawrence, or anybody else?
Nope.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And again, I was skeptical that this would be useful, and I'm happy to be wrong. So see everyone on the mailing list soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.